Greetings, this is Trish for HMP TV. Just letting you know that we're out here for the community, lots of resources and information here for you.
This is Paul from the Money Mob and I support HMP TV. That's right.
My name's DJ Supreme and I support HMP TV.
Amazing site with amazing content. We talk about politics, economics. Right tonight we're talking about Black Love, so make sure you subscribe and sign up to HMP TV.
We're here for the Black Love event. We're here to support our communities. Make sure that you show up and show out on our social media.
Okay, this is Paul from the Money Mob and I'm here supporting Black Love. All right, all the time, all right.
Wow, what can I say? Black Love. It's been an amazing event this evening. So much information shared, so much love in the room. Big up to Dean and Iola from the Thursday Club. We need more of these events. If you don't know about the Thursday Club, check them out on Facebook. Black Love Matters. I love you all.
Yeah, it's Justin, reporting from the Black Love event, What can I say? It was very informative. I found it to be, very interesting because I believe in Black Love, and it's good to see, Black Love thriving and still strong, especially in this society that we're living in right now. So, keep promoting these kind of events and let's all come together,
It was an absolute honour and a privilege to be surrounded by so much Black Love. The couples that were on the panel, they basically dropped so many nuggets. For me, what I'm going to take home is the importance of vision and leaving a legacy for your children's children, so it's not all about just meeting somebody and just because they're good looking or you're attracted to them. It's not about emotions. It's bigger than that. It's deeper than that. And for me, that's what I'm going to take away from that. I believe in Black Love, and there was so much Black Love in abundance tonight. So guys, get out, come and support more of these Black Love events.
Yeah, reporting from Brixton, yeah.
So I'm going to go straight into introducing Dr. Val. Last year, when I came to this first event, and Dr. Val was here, and she had a very short period of time, but so much information was filled in, and by popular demand, and I mean literally, you made this happen. She's back, and we're very grateful for you to be in here. So I'm just going to go through a quick bio. Back by popular demand, sociologist Dr. Val Bernard Allen returns with special presentation speaking primarily to me. No, single people, men and women, in healing and redemptive Black love for self and culture preservation. The presentation will shed light on Black love in an international step towards healing and cultural emancipation. So put your hands together, please, as we introduce Dr. Val.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy that we had that exercise at the beginning because it's helped me to have a sense of connection, right? So thank you, Iola, for warming us up, and then also for Nicola for taking it forward, and then of course that guy, where is he? What he did, it was really good. Thank you for that. So so I'm here, and I'm really happy to have an opportunity to say some things, but it's going to be a conversation between us, but obviously a conversation that I'm going to dominate. I'm going to dominate the conversation for 30 minutes, and then afterwards, am I still working to that time? 30 minutes, are we reviewing the time?
We've got 25.
25, so I'll dominate for 25, but you will be able to make contributions as well, and then there'll be a bit at the end for question and answers. So I thought I'd start off by just emphasizing this thing about love, healing, marriage, culture, and the question that we're starting with is, are we ready for love? Because when Iola sent her information around, that was the first thing. Are we ready for love? And it's an interesting question because it's got we in it. And for me, as a sociologist, we does not mean me and my little family. I've got my husband with me and my son who's come to join me. My brother was coming, but he's not well. But we doesn't just mean my little intimate space. We means community. right? So are we ready for love? And in my work with single women, that is one of the things that I emphasize, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So, but then it's a good question. Then it goes on to say the importance of healing and self-love. So self-love brings it back to the individual. And there's a relationship between community and the individual. And I could go on about that sociologically. Any sociologists in here? Anybody did sociology? A lot of people have done sociology. Oh, I won't ask you any questions. But anyway, let's take for granted that we need healing. Because that's the assumption in the question. Are we ready for love? Self-healing. Let's, because it's a bit of a cheeky question, really. Somebody comes to you and say, you need healing. They're saying to you that you're sick, right? So is Iola and her team saying to us, as a group of black people from different parts of the globe, that we are sick? And if we are sick as a community, what is the sickness? What is the sickness, and how would you name this sickness? And also, what is the treatment? So it's a string of questions, but they're all interconnected. Are we sick? If so, what is the sickness? And what would you say is the treatment? I'm just going to give you a minute to discuss it with the person next to you. Are we sick as a community? What is the sickness? And if so, what is the treatment? Okay, that's about a minute. I'm going to take 3 responses. All right, I said I'd control the conversation. So you've had a chance just to oil your mind a little bit around this issue. So can somebody answer the question, are we sick? Do you think that our community, whatever you see the community as being, people with black skins, people from the African diaspora, Caribbean people, post-colonial people, black British, whatever, would you say that we're sick? Put your hands up if you think we are not sick. Interesting. Right. Okay. So let's have some responses. You're 50-50. And the rest of you would say that we're sick. Put your hands up if you think we're sick. Well, it's about just a little bit more. And there's some people in between. Can I have somebody who thinks that we are not sick to give an explanation? Let me ask this sister here, and then I'll ask the brother on this side.
I think as a people that we're not really capable of being sick, staying in sick, because we're constantly working against it naturally. So I think we're weakened, really, not sick.
Right, so the response here, very interesting. We're not sick, we're weakened, all right, because we're pushing against something. All right, thank you for that. What would you say, brother?
So as I was saying, so growing up, I think there was, for me, if somebody said to me, oh, do you like white girls? And I'd be like, nope, I'm into my black woman, I love my black woman, and I have no shame in that. And so I think it's not about whether we're sick or not. It's really just about who you are as a person and how you've been raised, I think. I think to say that we're sick as a race, I don't buy that. I think it's really down to who you are and how you live your life.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. So we get one response from the sister that is about a collective identity, right? And then the response from the brother is very individualistic. It's up to the individual. That's one of the tensions. That's a real tension. Even in sociology, it's a massive tension between the freedom, we call it social agency. Does the individual have the freedom or the autonomy to do what they want and to make their own decisions? And then the other question is, well, to what extent does society or culture actually determine the personality, the experiences, the opportunities of individuals? So there is a real tension. And I think that in all my discussions, whatever groups I work with, that a lot of people lean towards the individualistic side. A lot of people have a greater understanding of a psychological, because I did it, I got through. So if I got through, then it's possible. I don't think like that. But in sociology, so that's a truth, but the perspective that the sister brought to the table is also a truth. We're individuals, but we form a collective. And that little exercise that we were doing, and then you were saying to us, what gauge do you feel? And we were almost similar in like 6, 7. That is an example of how there is social resonance when people come together. And there are lots of things that we experience, despite our differences individually. You know, there are things that bring us together because there's a historical reality that we share, and there's also an imagination that is generated through our sort of historical realities as people of color living in Western society. All right, so they're both at work. So let's go on. So, right, so some people say we're sick, some say that we're not. What would you, for those of you who think that we are, what would you name as the sickness? What phrase would you give it? Coronavirus? SARS? Yes, brother.
I don't want to sit out the circle because it's non-spiritual. It's not correct spiritually, so I'm going to sit down next to somebody. I see us as organs within the body. It's not that we talk about this thing of relationships, and the body is complete. It's not one part. You can't be the liver, the heart, the lung, the stomach. Nothing survives autonomously, but they all correlate and work with each other to keep the body complete going. And the thing about us where individuality is championed is that you look outside with everybody else and they understand I'm the heart, I'm the brain. Everything follows the brain and the heart. This is the brain, this is the heart, this is the liver, these are the kidneys. But because we don't have that code of the body complete, there's a cancer somewhere and the rest of the body doesn't know it's sick. Because the heart say, I'm cool. But you're part of the same body. So at some point, because cancer spreads, it's going to lick the heart. And that's what's happening with knife crime. It just gets closer and closer and closer because there's a cancer in the body. But the heart saying, no, I'm cool. I beat exactly how I'm supposed to beat. And the brain saying, no, I'm thinking exactly as I'm supposed to think. And don't worry, the liver. The liver is sick. That's got nothing to do with me. But it is because it's the body complete. And because we don't act as the body complete, we act as the separate organs, we're sick. But we're not going to know until it catches up with us.
So would you call that sickness cancer?
Cancer, absolutely. Cancer? It's cancer.
You would call it cancer. You're fidgeting. You want to say something.
Please.
But I'm going to let you. Is there somebody else who wants to say, before I move on and really dominate? It's just to get our... Yeah, the brother here.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think when we get into definitions, it's really important that we look at... I like the idea of... what was it that you used? Weakened. And I think if we look at illness in regards to our immune system, we usually catch more when we're weak. And so our historical experience has made us weak in that sense. And I believe that it makes us very unique on the planet. This is the reason why Black Love is a real focal point, not just for us, but the wider world that we're looking at Black Love. And the reason why is because within our weakness, we've still maintained a level of connection. That exercise today is about our connections. And I think this is what has been severed more than anything else, because that's the axis of who we are as a people, our connections. Whereas if we look at other cultures, their connection is about survival, primary. Their prime thing is about survival. Ours is about our existence and continuation. So it's a very different mentality. So when we talk about illness and we talk about weakness, I think that what happens is that throughout the process, we start to realize that there's an element of weakening, and that may be the weakening of a culture that is causing us to be sick.
Right, thank you for that. Thank you for that. You're cool. So we've got weakened, we've got cancer, and severed. I like that. A severing, right, has taken place. Okay, so next question. How do we deal with this severing and weakness? What kinds of methodology do you think is required? What kind of diagnosis and social medical intervention is required to deal with this condition, however we name it? Who's there? Okay, thank you.
I think it's unconditionally loving and accepting ourselves for what we are and where we are, not where we believe we should be or can be.
Okay, so it's about loving and accepting ourselves. And the brother here, I don't remember his name, but he did say he's married. That's what I remember when we were doing that exercise. I'm married. He's Paul. He said he's come here because he wants, one of the things that he wants to understand is what is love. What is love? And you know, when we think about the word love, I'm not even doing what's on here, but anyway, when we think about the word love, we get this gooey feeling, don't we? A sense of warmth and whatever around this notion of love. And from a Christian tradition, there are different types of love, isn't it? There's agape, there's filial, there's eros. You know, there's different types of expressions of love. But for me as a sociologist, love is about repetitive communication and what I call the mundane aspects of life that are repeated over and over, and that brings familiarity. So when we were going around in the circle, the more that we went around in the circle, the closer there was a sense of connection. And if you speak to somebody who's just lost somebody, and the point at which they break down, it might be that they're in the supermarket and somebody walks past them and they can smell the aftershave or the perfume that the person wore. Or when they wake up in the morning and they pick up the cup that person would normally pick up. Those are the points at which the individual breaks down. That is because the way in which we connect with each other in intimate or friendship relationships is through repetition. And that's what we call family or intimate spaces. Intimate spaces is about repetitive activities. So, you know, some of my friends say they don't like my sociology of love. But when you break it down, that's what we're doing. And therein lies some of the solution to us dealing with the severing or the weakening or the cancer. There's something about repetitiveness and intentionality, an intentional approach. Okay, so let me just continue. I remember when I was very small, my mum and her friends were chatting in the kitchen, and then I heard one of them say, well, what you expect? We're not curse. And I just remember, you know, like I was playing and I looked up because I knew what the word curse meant, because, you know, curse, people who curse is swearing. I didn't understand it fully, but they were talking about black issues, you know, something to do with race. And that was the statement that completed that conversation. And the women sat around and nodded in agreement. Nobody challenged that statement that we are a cursed people. Have you heard that? Is it just me? So if you've heard it, where does it come from? Where do you think that kind of thinking comes from? Yes, sir.
As far as I'm concerned, one of the main problems that we all suffer from as black people, colonialism. And, you know, if you keep telling a child he's going to be a bad child, eventually that child will believe they're going to be a bad child. And as black people, we've been told that we're cursed. So we will repeat it.
All right, so you believe that the colonialists gave us that concept, yeah? There's something in there that we're cursed. Anybody want to bring it down more specifically? Thank you for that. The colonialists. What would you like to say, sister?
From the Bible that said that the descendants of Ham, Noah's grandson, his descendants would be cursed. That's where it came from. Right.
It's actually, yes, and it comes from the Bible. So when the colonialists went into different parts of the world and they spread Christianity, right, we had Islamic colonialists as well, but we're just dealing with the Christian one now. There was this idea that people of color were cursed. It's called the curse of Ham. Yeah, so some of you have heard this. If you haven't, it's really interesting. It's a misinterpretation, but it's there, and it's the curse of Ham. It's not true, but it has fed the imagination. I used the term imagination earlier because the imagination is an incredible tool for bringing about healing and change, right? We all know that, don't we? We read all these motivational things. But what about when we have a collective imagination? And as the young people say to me, this is the thing. This is the thing. Somebody imagined that African people were cursed. And these people were from Holland. And with that thought, they were able to go over to South Africa and develop the apartheid system. It just started with a thought. It started with a justification, because obviously they wanted to go and take the land and control. But it started with a thought. Somebody one day had the thought. But look what happened. Look at how a whole community were disenfranchised by a thought that germinated in somebody's imagination, and then they shared it. And they began to communicate that thought. And that thought became intentional. And as a result of that, we call it apartheid, which has gone. But it was a system, it was a political, economic system that was recognized and destroyed the lives of many people, and it started with a thought. So if it is that we have been severed or weakened or we have cancer, what could we do if we generated thoughts of healing, thoughts of love, all right, towards each other? Has anybody heard of Frantz Fanon? Right, so Frantz Fanon, he was a Martinican psychiatrist who was writing in the 50s and 60s, and he was analysing what was going on with colonial powers, the way that they went in and dominated countries, particularly Algeria and Martinique. And he looked at the strategies that they used and the language that was used to subjugate peoples, how thoughts were transferred into language, and the incredible impact that it had on people. And one of his famous books is called The Wretched of the Earth. And he's talking about how people who are seen as the lowest of the low and seen as the wretched of the earth, how they were subjected to these kinds of thoughts. But yet still, it was a weakening. It was a weakening, and there was opportunity for growth and opportunity for retaliation. Domination always leaves people diminished. So that's the word that I chose, diminished. Domination always leaves people diminished. And I know that some people argue that what happened in terms of colonialism or racism or slavery doesn't have anything to do with our identities today. There are people that believe that. Doesn't have, because the individual has the right and the ability to insulate themselves against those onslaughts. So I want you to share with the person next to you whether or not you think that is a useful perspective, that the individual can insulate themselves from the onslaughts of colonialism or post-slavery or racism in wider society. How strong is the individual? Just have a conversation about that. So we live in a society that's increasingly individualistic, and some people refer to this as a postmodern society. And postmodern societies are societies that are moving towards excessive choice and consumerism, right? And it's what I want. It's what's important to me. And research has shown that this kind of thinking has broken down the stability of the family. It's broken down the foundations of what we would call norms or mores or values in society. And it's had an amazing impact on kids. You know, so I work with teenagers in one of the jobs that I have with teenagers, and sometimes they come to you with so much stuff going on for them, but they have nothing in their basket. They have no foundation. Their foundation is all about consuming what they can consume now. And they operate within what we refer to as sort of present time orientation. Everything is about the now. It's very difficult to put something down, you know, and they refer to that as deferred gratification. All of this is impacting on the way that the family structure is emerging. But then when you compound that with the experience of post-colonialism or slavery, where the marriage and the family was seen as a way of challenging the slave master. You know, when black people came together, it was a challenge to the slave master. And that is why sometimes the way in which the slave master dealt with it, I'm going to be very stereotypical to make the point, the way that they would deal with breaking up any sort of glue that they were bringing together. You know, I talked about repetitive activities that binds people. He would just rupture that by coming in. The wife, for example, might be there cooking the food and her name's Mary, and he would just call Mary because he wants Mary now. He wants Mary now. Can you imagine? You're in your home preparing and somebody just walks in, and the man and the woman would find it very difficult. Well, difficult, that's an understatement. It would be traumatic for her, but it was something that she had to understand and live with. But she would control her husband through it, because she would say, if the master comes for me, please don't say nothing, because him will kill you. And as a result of that, black women have a memory of controlling black men. And they control them through a desire to keep them safe. But it's stifling for the man, right? So we have gendered memories that we play out that can destroy relationships. And I remember last year when I mentioned something about, like the strong black woman. That's one of the reasons why we have the strong black woman. Somebody felt very strongly about that. It was almost like I was attacking women. But no, this is not an attack. This is an analysis. Like if you're not well and you go to the doctor and he says you've got so-and-so, and you get all worked up and emotional and say, that's not going to help. We need to analyze what has happened to us as a people. And there are certain gendered memories that have played out, and they erupt in our relationships today when we are married, and they challenge our ability to settle in relationships. All right? So if the black man faces a situation where he could not protect his woman, he doesn't have the right to protect his woman. And if he does, well, he has the right, he will be killed. You can see that kind of tension and how that sort of reticence would be passed on to the next generation of men. Right? And now it doesn't mean that, because I was having a conversation with my son when we were coming here, it doesn't mean that there isn't resilience and rage and courage within black men. Nobody's saying that. But there is something that has been turned off. Something that has been turned off in masculinities, black masculinities, that we're still learning about. And there are certain things that have been turned off in women and turned on in women, and things that have been turned on in men. And some of that is an expression of our pathologies. Now, I don't know if anybody here has heard of epigenetics. Some of you have heard. So you could explain what it's about. It's an emerging science, which is very interesting. And just because of time, basically what it says is that they've done research, for example, on Holocaust, the children of Holocaust victims, the children who are in their 50s and their parents were involved, in Germany back there, or Poland, and they experience stress, and they don't know why they're stressed, because they have money, their children are doing very well, etc., but they're experiencing stress. And what studies are showing is that if your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents went through some kind of trauma, that would be passed on through the genes in some way. I'm not a scientist in that way, but it's been passed on and change or switch off certain capacities, either physically or emotionally. Now, if you think about, in terms of slavery, if we think about, that intergenerational trauma, and, we cannot deny its reality, despite the fact that some individuals will say, I can insulate myself from that. I think that we have to be very, very truthful and recognize that there are things that have passed on. When my kids were small, I remember driving through Harlesden, and there was it looked like a grandfather at the traffic light, and he had a little boy on a scooter, and the little boy accidentally went forward when cars were going past, and that grandfather started to cuss off that little he just started cussing and, "You idiot," and all of that, and it was just really sort of horrible to see. But I understood why he was doing that. He was terrified. He didn't want him to do it again. But we have a memory that if we curse our children, the slave master will not come and get them. Cursing our children was a way of protecting our children. And we would curse our men, and the men would curse us to diminish us as a way of protecting us. And these things have continued. Just go on the internet and see who's cursing who. These things have continued, but we don't know why we do it. We don't know why it exists. So individuals will say, well, I don't do it, but a lot of us are doing it, or we know a lot of people that do, right? It's a memory. It's a social memory or social pathology that has been passed on from generation to generation. Okay, anybody burning to say something? Yes, sister.
With my son, a lot of the time people tell me, oh, he's so cute, oh, he's like, no, he's not. No, he's not. Because there's so much growth that I know that he has to do, that you're just seeing cute and you're just seeing sweet, or he might be humble today, but that's not him every other day. And I do things like that. And I still do it because I know that he's got a long way to go. Don't put him on that pedestal, because I know that he has a long way to go.
Okay, so somebody was saying previously that we're pushing against something. The sister over here was saying that, we're pushing against something. Now, if we are a community pushing against something, I don't know what that's something, how we would phrase it. We might call it systematic racism, microaggressions, pathological trauma, whatever. That's what we're pushing against, right? So when we then make it, because we think that's the way to manage our children, and then we sort of diminish them a little bit so that they have so that they will not be too pompous or whatever. You can see the impact of that. It's not the same as a child who doesn't have those things that they're pushing against. Yeah, so the strategies that we use as parents, the strategies that we use in our relationships with each other, with our partners, our husbands and our children, I'm pointing to my husband there, right? Well, you can say, would you like to say something, Merv? Strategies. He's worked really hard to get here, honestly. He's given up a class and blow up to be here with me. So the strategies that we use have to be very, very different. We read, so in my work with single women, for example, I do not use I discourage them from those self-help books that were written for white middle-class women. Because they think, oh, if I do this and if I look like that, maybe I will meet him. The strategies that we have to employ to be, approached, maybe that's better, because that's part of the strategy that you don't approach, right? The strategies that we have to employ are very different, and they're different psychologically, sociologically, culturally, and spiritually. A lot of the self-help books do not recognize the importance of the spiritual identity. Now, when this country became developed, one of the things that it brought with it was excessive rationality. And we've been socialized in that, to be rational and to be reasonable. But we come from the people that connected with the spirit world, right? And for me, I'm from the Christian tradition. All right, so you may have your own traditions, but the spirit world, spirituality, a creator, all of these concepts are fundamental to the enhancement of a community. It's absolutely fundamental. So when you use psychological methods or these sort of pseudo-psychological methods, it's not going to help us. What we are dealing with is that stuff that we're pushing against. And to push that stuff down requires intentional collective work. That is why I say we when it comes to singleness. So I say to single women on my course, it matters to us, our community, that you are single. 65% of Black Caribbean women in this country are single. That is a serious statistic. And 65%, it was in 2008, 2009, all right? And I think it's got worse. All right, now if we just do the individualistic stuff and think, well, I've got my bloke, and what's wrong with her? It's got nothing to do with me. It doesn't work like that. We as a people have to have a collective identity to deal with this issue of singleness, because we've got to save the children. We have to save the children. You cannot have little girls and boys walking around thinking, we do not like each other, because that is what we're teaching them. We do not like each other. We do not love each other. We have a political, a social, and a cultural responsibility to love each other. We have to be intentional about it. All right? Instead of just buying into an individualism that says, you know, I can choose who I want. All right? Now, there's Dr. Boyce talks about financial lovemaking. And he tracks, have you heard of, anybody heard him? He's really good, isn't he? He talks about the relationship, the intense relationship between love and finances. And if you're going to build the economic base of a community, which is one of our problems, all right, the economic base of a community, we have to come together. And when we come together, we have to learn to trust each other. Everything that has been done to dismantle us, to sever us, to weaken us, to diminish us, we have to do what we refer to in sociology as counter-hegemonic strategy. We have to go back. Everything that has brought us down, we use the same processes to bring ourselves up. Because to bring us down or to diminish us was intentional, and it was for economic reasons. And we need to liberate ourselves in an intentional way and build our economic base, give our children a platform of dignity on which to operate on. We need our men to marry us. We need our men to make that decision politically, do the reading, do the praying, to marry us and say, I am going to do this. We need to generate within our community the fact that Black love matters. That needs to be a mantra. It's not just... It's a mantra, because if somebody in Holland could use their imagination and have a thought and completely change the lives of countless generations in South Africa, what could we do? What could we do if we used our imaginations? There's a beautiful text in the Bible that says, do you know the story of the Tower of Babel? Yeah, you know it, yeah. There's a beautiful text in there that when I read it, it just blew me away. When they started building the tower, because they didn't want to be in a flood situation again, it says that God spoke to, you know, the people in heaven and said, we need to go down and we need to confound the language. We need to go down and confound the language, because anything that they imagine to do and they communicate it, they will do it. Therein lies a spiritual, a perennial law. Therein lies a sociological law. When people have a thought and they exchange it, and they keep exchanging it, then amazing things happen. We need more women to get married. Black love matters. Okay, I'm going to stop because of time. I want to, how much, is that it? Okay. Just a minute, if anybody's got a burning question. I did want to say that I'm going to have a desk over there somewhere to talk about, you can talk to me about the book that I've written, The 7 Habits for Black Women Who Want to Marry. I have a free sample copy that you can download. Iola will send the link around. I have a book, The 7 Habits, and I also have a development program for women who want to marry. I could show you the text that I got this morning at about 7:30. One of the women on my program said to me, 5 men are checking me. This morning about 5:30. Because she's done the work, she understands what's required, and her life has changed immensely. So there you go.
Do you know what? We're too polite. Stand up and give a round of applause for that.
Woo!
Thank you.
Woo! Woo!
Thank you. I think we need more of that, and we need to be more engaged. I really appreciate that. So we're coming up for a small break, but before we do, I had a list of questions, but we haven't got much time to ask all of them. But we've got 3 couples that we're going to use as a demonstration of what Black love really is. So we would like to introduce Paul and Terry Mackenzie. How long have you guys been married?
Almost 26 years? July, 26 years this July.
We got Dana and Rodney. How long have you been married?
How long have you been married? 6 years. 6 years.
Just testing.
6 years.
And we've got AMUN and NYARAI. Did I get it? NYARAI. Oh, brilliant. How long have you been married?
18 years.
How long?
18 years.
So we've got voices of experience on our panel. So I've got one question to ask. And as a couples, individually, and one person can answer from each couple, were you conscious of the pathology within the DNA when you're going into your marriage? And if you were, and then we're talking about what Dr. Val asked earlier on, were you conscious of the pathology, the history, and the pain barriers we had when you chose each other? And if you were, why did you go down this route?
I have to ask. Do you want to say it?
Yeah, I can pass it on to you. But yeah, I think the last time we were here, thanks for inviting us again, Ayola. Lovely. So the last time we were here, I think we touched on it, but because I guess when I met Paul, I knew him because I called for somebody like myself, actually. And, we realised we had so much in common. The first thing we did was just ask each other where we wanted to be in 5 years' time. And we wrote it. We didn't even have paper. We didn't even have pen, but we borrowed that and we borrowed a bit of tissue and we looked and we saw our handwriting was just exactly the same. And so we had the same values. And that was so helpful because then I realised, oh my gosh, this is a deep one because, we had a contract. I felt we had a contract, and I know we have now anyway. We are soulmates, twin flames, whatever you want to call it. And so that was really important to go on this journey because I wanted not only I wanted ministry. I didn't just want any old relationship. So I was quite clear about who I wanted to draw into my life. And I did the work, and he came to me. I wasn't all done, but we did the rest together. So that was what was wonderful because that was what was meant. And it's still a journey. And we're still working together. I'll just pass it on to you.
So let's talk about the difficult parts. Okay. So we did the napkin test. Handwriting smooth, looked good, freaky moment. We looked at each other and we said, the values literally were one apart. And we did like 10 values. And they were one apart. And that one value that was different was that you were going to church at the time. So she was going to church at the time. And so I had to think to myself, if I wanted to be in this relationship, do I have to change one of my values? And just to cut a long story, so I got saved 25 times in my plight, didn't I? So I used to go to church, sit there, knowing that this is my wife, and just try and ignore the pastor 25 times until it was, I don't know what happened. It was almost like, do you know if you push hard enough at something, and it's meant to be, because the value, I kept referring to those values and there was nobody else out there that was meeting that. Obviously, between the challenges of, saying to her that one value is keeping us apart, I would meet other people, not intentionally, but their values were never the same. And so I ended up looking for this woman for a period of time. And then it just worked out that we kind of got together. And that one value that was literally the thing that divided us just became one. And so we share every single value.
That's right, because I'm not even in church now. We recognise where the church is. The church is here, so I couldn't let that split us apart. No way. Another thing I wanted to say was, he was the mirror image of me. How could I let somebody dictate that, So we just ran off and we've been running ever since. And we've been loving ever since. We've been questioning our cultural narratives. We question everything. And that's what I would advise anybody to do. Because remember, everything is man-made. And as well as we're the collective, rightly so, we are also the individual. We came here to have a unique experience. Not a carbon copy of anybody, actually. But the collective will be very powerfully as it comes together in everybody's uniqueness. That's what I believe. And I felt that. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name's Dana. Did we know where the pain points were? absolutely. So just to give you a very quick historical narrative, I'm the oldest of three. I'm 9 years older than my sister and 15 years older than my brother. And we all unfortunately have different fathers due to, mum just had, incredibly bad luck. I grew up in an area that was predominantly white. The married people in that area were white people. So I grew up thinking that marriage wasn't for me because I wasn't a white person. All of my mother's friends were single mothers. So the comment that Dr. Valerie made about hearing that we are cursed, it wasn't an explicit exploration of that narrative, but by what was happening as a process of osmosis. By the time I was 8 years old, I already accepted that I would have a child, the man would leave, I would be unhappy, and that I wasn't good enough. To compound that, I haven't spoken to my father for 23 years. The last time I saw him was when I was 13 years old. Myself and my mother bumped into him in London Bridge Station, and the last thing that my father said to me was that he wasn't ready to be a father. So I want you to understand the backdrop that I am coming from as the person that you see here who now has been married. That was never something that I thought was for me. I now claim black love as my birthright. That is the foundation, okay? I had several relationships. I have an 18-year-old son, I know ID's coming, and a 5-year-old son as well. And before I met my now husband, it's very similar to yourself. There was some personal work that I had to do to undo the trauma. I had to let go of the fact that my father never gave me what I needed when I was younger to feel full as an individual and as a woman, and understand that he's just a person of flesh. He did the best that he could, and one of the best things my father ever did for me is two things. One was giving me a younger sister, and two was staying out of my life, so at least I didn't have that confusion of him coming backwards and forwards. He is a person, he's just flesh, just like me, he's walking his own road. So what I realized was that was the frequency with which I was emitting, and that was what I was, when you catch fish with bait, that was the bait that I was catching. So therefore, if I wanted something different, there was a different frequency that I had to emit, and I had to work out what I wanted, because the pros was always what about I didn't want. I didn't want someone who wasn't emotionally in touch with themselves. I didn't want someone who was abusive. I didn't want someone that couldn't understand me. And flip that onto its head in terms of what do I want? I want a loving person, an adventurous person, someone that's going to accept and love my son. And literally 4 months after my previous relationship, New Year's Day 2011, this one comes bouncing into a kitchen at a barbecue, which I nearly never went to because I thought the previous partner would be there. And within the first 2 weeks, I knew that I was going to marry him. He's the most interesting person I'd ever met, and very similar to Terry and Paul. The values were there. We hashed it all out. What are you looking for? Where do you want to be? Not just in 5 years, 15, 20 years, henceforth. And we worked out that this wasn't just about us as a unit. It was what we were building. What is this relationship for? What is the purpose? You can't just have a relationship or a marriage. What is the mission and purpose for that relationship? And we stuck to those core values. And actually, we had a chat earlier. I'm coming. And I was saying that we've just decided that we have to work it out whatever happens, including adultery, which I know might be very controversial. You can pick us up on that a little bit later.
Thank you. Sorry, is that all right if I pass it?
I have no add-on.
This is an interesting one because I think our story is slightly different. Our journeys are slightly different. And I say that because we've been together for 28 years and we've been married for 18. And so when we was younger, we didn't necessarily think about a lot of these things. But what we did have was our own personal experiences. And I think this speaks volumes. And this is why what you said resonates, is because part of that process, we had a traditional African wedding. And I'm a youth worker at one of my first trades as such, and so the community itself knew of us, and so we almost took it as we're young, but we're going to take this plight and say we're going to get married. And we didn't necessarily take on board everything else. But what we was aware was that community was watching. And what we was representing was almost a belief. And it was something that we didn't take on board until afterwards, when we realized that people looked at us and thought, for them to be so young and make that level of commitment, and the way we did it, as I said, it was an African traditional wedding, and that was very just not done in those days. And so when being seen in that light, it gave us a level of responsibility. This is what I was speaking about earlier in regards to the community has endorsed what we're doing. One thing that we did take on board, though, was we recognized from a very early point that it was a joining of families. It wasn't individuals. It was a joining of families, and that made a major difference in regards to when we then come together. Our healing circle is not just us two, it's our families. And that changed a lot of things. So we felt a lot more responsible for what we was doing and what we was presenting. And I think the one thing that I would say that drove us, and I don't know if this was the same, but it was our first. Because when our daughter came, we got married, our daughter was 2. And so she was our purpose. We speak about purpose now. I mean, her name is Zion, but our youngest is called Nia, which means purpose. But our first child gave us purpose. It gave us a reason to be together. And that level of commitment, there's something about being in a relationship where, you know, the utopian time, you know, when things are just so new and so brilliant, that our daughter was the source of that. And that gave us more of an understanding about ourselves, because we realized that we need to think about what experience do we want our youngest daughter to experience, which was different to ours, both coming from a so-called broken family, and being able to be the example, especially for myself, being a man and trying to avoid the examples that my dad set. And again, being with someone and being taking that responsibility at a very young age. So it was something that for us, I don't think we thought about that much. And it's over the years that it's allowed us to develop and think about, wow, we actually made a commitment without actually knowing the ripple effects and what that has on everyone else in society.
Okay, so as you can see, we are starved of all the kinds of information we need. So what I'm going to ask is we're going to take a 10-minute break. There's some food at the back, there's toilets, and then we're going to come back and we're going to delve into some real meat and patties and whatever else of the information that we need. So 10 minutes break. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we're going to sing There's Nothing Like This from Omar. Can you guys remember Omar? Yeah, ooh, okay, at the end, yeah, you guys can just sing with me, so I'm going to just sing for you. I have a store here called Make My Day, and also Make My Day events, so I'm a singing agency. Basically, if you have any event that's going on, I can provide singers for that event. So birthday, wedding, yeah, speech afterwards, a celebration life, and also we do events as well, so we can also organize your event for you in type of like a bespoke type of package. But my business partner here, she'll explain that afterwards. So, but yeah, come to our store and we'll talk to you more about that. So, selector, put on the music, please. Can you put up the volume, please? Yeah. Let's start again. Rewind, selector. Rewind.
There's nothing like
And I would like to welcome my business partner to say a few words, because she doesn't want to. But anyway, just come to the store, okay? And we do weddings, events, we'll sing for you. Just come, just right over there, yeah? Thank you so much. Have a good day.